Professor, thank you for making the time to see me. I've been working on my presentation about tropical forests and I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Of course, Grace. I'm glad you reached out. So how's it coming along?
I think it's going well, but I'm not sure if I'm covering the right topics. I've outlined the different tropical forests in each region, like the Amazon, Congo, and Southeast Asia, and I'm also planning to dive into their unique flora and fauna. But it feels a bit overwhelming.
It can be. Covering all regions and their biodiversity is ambitious for a single presentation. Have you thought about narrowing it down? Perhaps focusing on a few key examples instead of trying to cover everything?
I did think about that, but isn't it important to show the global perspective? I'm worried that by focusing on just a few, I might miss the bigger picture.
Good point, but remember your objective isn't to overwhelm your audience with information. Instead, think about how you can guide them through a clear, cohesive narrative. For instance, instead of listing every region, you could compare a couple of forests with contrasting characteristics. That way, you highlight their differences but still touch on the global scale.
I see what you mean. So maybe I could compare the Amazon with the Congo Basin? They have some striking similarities but also some fascinating differences in their ecosystems.
Exactly. And for flora and fauna, you don't need to mention every species. Maybe focus on a few iconic or representative species that embody the forest's unique environment.
Right, so I could talk about jaguars in the Amazon and lowland gorillas in the Congo. Do you think that's enough, or should I add more examples?
I think that's plenty if you delve into their roles in the ecosystem. You want your audience to remember these examples, so avoid overloading them with too many details.
Got it. Now, I've also included a section on the threats these forests face, like deforestation and climate change. Is that necessary or should I leave it out?
That's crucial. You can't discuss tropical forests without addressing the environmental challenges. Just be sure it aligns with the overall flow of your presentation. Perhaps you can end with this topic as a way to leave a lasting impression on your audience.
That makes sense. So, start with the basics, compare key forests, dive into some species, and end with the threats they face.
Exactly. And as for your delivery, remember to pace yourself. Don't rush through the slides. Let the listeners absorb the information, especially when you're talking about the complex ecosystems.
I'll work on that. Oh, and the presentation is in the large lecture hall. I've never spoken there before. Any tips?
The lecture hall can be intimidating because of its size. Make sure you're familiar with the space. Arrive early to test the equipment and practice projecting your voice. You don't want to be too quiet, especially if some of your audience is seated far back.
That's a great point. I'll definitely get there early. Anything else I should keep in mind?
It's important to establish eye contact even with the audience members at the back. It helps keep them engaged. And don't forget to set aside time for questions at the end. Interaction can make your presentation more memorable.
I will. Thank you so much for the advice, Professor. I feel a lot more confident now.
You're welcome, Grace. I'm sure your presentation will be excellent. Just remember, keep it clear and engaging, and you'll impress everyone.